Hey, folks. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to my first ever live stream. I have never done this before, so thank you. There's a bunch of you out there, and I'm really stoked about it. This is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month here in the U.S., and I've taken the national uh, off of the whole description. Because VMware's customers were global. We're a global operation. A lot of our customers are also global. And cybersecurity knows no bounds. Attackers come from everywhere. They're in our countries. They're outside of our countries. The internet has no borders, and what's the old saying? The internet sees censorship as damage and routes around it. Yeah, and so I really like that saying. My stream here. I want to find. Oops. But yeah, so this is my schedule moving forward, and if you've got questions, put them out in the chat. I've got the live chat up on my setup here, just trying to get it figured out. I want to talk today about, just for about 20 minutes, about hardening vSphere. A little bit of process, a little bit of tooling. There's security is a process. And that's something we need to remember. And I'm borrowing that. Bruce Schneier, the cryptographer, the American cryptographer, said that back in 2020. Not 2020. This is 2020. The year 2000. He said that, and it's very true. It's a process. It's not a product. It's not a particular tool. Look up it's a blog post of his. Look it up, and if you don't follow him, do that. He's very wise and talks a lot about cryptographic stuff and talks a lot about the process side of things. Some of the more non-technical things. Don't invent your own crypto, that sort of thing. But what he was talking about is that above and beyond tools, and you might think, hey, Bob, you work for VMware. You guys sell tools and tools help. There are really interesting tools. The CB workload tool that was announced at VMworld this year. That is going to be a game changer for vSphere admins who get tasked with a lot of security duties, and that they wanted or didn't want in a lot of cases, vulnerability management being one of them. And so that's going to be a huge thing. And so, but so let's get into it. Speaking of process, and that the number one thing I want to start with here as far as steps for hardening is you need to be in the right mindset. Choose wisely. This is the knight from Raiders of the Lost Ark. And Raiders of the Lost Ark, no, the Holy Grail, the Indiana Jones, and the one where he's searching for the Holy Grail, and the bad guy chooses poorly. And I love that. You've chosen poorly. Choose wisely. Security, it's not a contest. It's not, well, it is a little bit of a contest, but it's not a race to see who can have more security controls. In fact, the idea of turning it to 11, I love the screenshot, or I love this, the stock photo of the amp. I didn't even know some amps had an 11 on them. That's really cool. But it's not a contest. The more stuff you add as far as security controls, it's a trade-off. You're trading off usability. You're also often trading off budget, opportunity cost. The idea that you're spending time maintaining, not only are you impinging on the usability of your system, but you're also spending time maintaining security controls and that time could be spent on other things like patching, other things that can take you further. And so I mentioned this, being able to prioritize what are the big gaps in an environment, what are the big gaps in a vSphere deployment, and fix those first. Hit the big stuff first, then work on the small stuff. I see this a lot with TLS cipher suites too. People get really down a rabbit hole around TLS 1.2 cipher suites. Yeah, TLS 1.2 has got some ciphers in it that are getting old. But, at the flip side, if you haven't patched in a while, do that first before you go, with the very specific things. And, carts and horses is what I like to call them. They come in a particular order. Second, an asset inventory. And this is sort of the last process one, too. But Asset inventories. There's so many folks that don't have a list of what they have. What VMs do you have? What hosts do you have? What virtual appliances are in an environment? What network switches? There's a lot of tools as well that can help you with this. There's a Fling out of flings.vmware.com, excellent site, and there's a bunch of stuff that the ESXi for ARM stuff is out there. There's an event broker thing that's out there that's really cool. A lot of cool stuff. A lot of end user computing stuff to tuning for operating systems deployed as VMs, things like that. One of them is the software asset management, and it'll query the environment. It'll get you a list of all of the stuff. What can't it see? Again, it can't see storage arrays. It can't see network switches. It can't see things that aren't visible inside the environment, and so that's important to remember. When it comes right down to it, security. There's a joke among a lot of InfoSec professionals that the biggest tool for InfoSec professionals is Excel, and honestly, that's true of IT as in general. Excel, just use the tool. It's got enough stuff in it to do what you need to do. It's got multiple user access. You can share it. It's got some version control in it. That's really nice. Even just a simple thing where you've got a column of, device name, IP, that enables you to go through it. You use it as a checklist. You take and copy the tab somewhere and you call it October patching, and then you go through and you make sure that there's updates that have been applied to everything. Pretty straightforward. But if you don't know what you have, how do you know if it's patched? So speaking of patching, speaking of securing things, the Security Configuration Guide, SCG, it's been around for a long time. A guy by the name of Mike Foley started it. I've taken over for Mike. Mike is doing Kubernetes stuff, the vSphere with Tanzu stuff, and he's enjoying it as far as I can tell. A little change of pace for him. And change of pace for me too. So if you've got feedback about the SCG, let me know. But I also want to talk about product applicability guides. One of the things that I do vSphere security, but I'm also calling it vSphere security and compliance. And I'm getting into the compliance side of things because I think collectively we all love to hate it. And we hate it for certain reasons that I think are fixable. Auditors don't really know a lot about vSphere, and I think we can help with that, and I can help with that. And so that's what I'm working on. I'm trying to make your life a little bit better in that regard by helping to educate auditors. And one of the things, we've got a group that does compliance solutions, and they have got a patented database of, we use NIST 800-53 as our baseline, and then they have a database that can pivot those controls into PCI and ISO 27001 and NERC CIP and all these other compliance frameworks. And so we're doing that and we're publishing it. They're out on the VMware Validated Design docs right now. If you do 800-53, if you do PCI, this is really interesting stuff. And you can give it to an auditor auditors talking to each other, that's, they'll understand or start to understand. And then we'll follow that up with some additional stuff. But I also want to show you the Security Configuration Guide itself. Here, let me... so this is the Security Configuration Guide for version 7. Just got released on Tuesday. And it's got some new stuff in it. It's been a few years since it's been updated. And the landscape around security has changed a bit. VMware has changed internally. We've restructured a little bit. All of the vSAN folks and all of the Cloud Foundation folks are in with the vSphere folks now, and we're all one big happy family. And we're doing a lot of blogging, or not blogging, but technical content over on core.vmware.com. Now, too, we're moving our stuff there. It's a work in progress, so if you go over there right now, you'll go, oh, there's not a whole lot of stuff here. It's coming. But, the security stuff, we're fleshing out the security stuff, too. It's a great platform. It's the same platform that the end-user computing folks use, the TechZone platform. And so we like it. This is published there as well. And I've got a ticket. If you look at the hardening guide page, I've got a ticket in to update that as well. But I've broken it out into 4 tabs now. It's not just one big blob, and I want to subdivide it further. The CIS folks, as Center for Internet Security, actually subdivide these, take this guidance and subdivide it into communications and other things, and I'm okay with that. Maybe for update 2, the next update release for vSphere. Not promising anything, but we're looking at about a 6-month cadence here for update releases. I won't. Maybe I'll do that for that as well. But if you've got feedback about this, yeah, let me know. There's a document, when you download it, it's a zip file. There's an introductory document there, and then the Excel spreadsheet. And let's look at it. It's got 4 tabs. ESXi vCenter Server is new. I went through vCenter Server and took a look at what we need to configure, just base stuff. One of the things moving forward is that to harden vSphere, we really want you to shut SSH off. vSphere 7 especially, because vSphere 7 fixes a lot of the API stuff. vSphere 6.7 had about 60% API coverage. vSphere 7 has got about 99%, 98, 99% API coverage, and that was crucial. And so you shouldn't have to manage. If you find anything that you still have to manage through SSH, please let us know, because we need to fix that. And yeah, but going through the management interfaces, just all stuff to consider. And the SCG is a type of implementation guide. So in the world of compliance and security, there's compliance frameworks. They often tell you what you need to do, but they don't really tell you how, and so that's kind of a problem. And then there's the flip side. There's implementation guides, which tell you exactly how to do it, but they don't tell you why. And that's also a problem, because you need to be able to use your head and make decisions. And so one of the things that Mike started that I really like continuing here is that the SCG should provide a little bit of context. And so trying to do that, trying to add context around why you might do that and use a particular control. So some of it's obvious, some of it isn't. And but also use your head. Not every environment needs to do everything. ESXi authentication, Active Directory authentication. You might not need that if you're a smaller environment or don't really need to have people logging into ESXi like that. You might choose not even to do that and put the root password in a password management system that you can sort of a break glass scenario that you can rotate it and change it if somebody checks it out. But you really want to drive a lot of that management in through vCenter Server itself. vCenter Server's got the robust role-based access control. It's got a permission model, got great logging, things like that. And so you want to drive it that way. Other things that are in the SCG 7, I've tried to tread lightly around CPU vulnerabilities. CPU vulnerabilities are a real big tangle because they're performance problems. The remediations are performance problems. You might need to buy new hardware. Now you're talking about budgets. It's a risk thing. You got to talk about that with your CISO. And so I've tried to take a light stance, but I've also tried to include patching. A lot of people use SCG just straight up as a checklist. And if you're going to score yourself, which is fine, I don't build in scores or anything like that. But if you're going to use it as a checklist and score yourself, I want you to score yourself on your patching, your hardware patching, your firmware patching, and appliance patching, software patching, all of that stuff too. And so I'm a big fan of patching if you've ever watched my stuff before. So a lot of stuff here. Other things, virtual machines. The virtual machine tab has got a lot of things. Basically anything that's kind of outside the virtual machine, that's a parameter to the virtual machine itself, is out here. I've got some... there's some, it's mostly the same guidance here. We've tried to sync with the DISA-STIGs a little bit as well. And trying to drive a little bit more commonality between them so there's not duplication. But I've also added an in-guest tab. And this is new and not 100% sure about this. Some people are a little skeptical of it. But Secure Boot, again, if we're using a checklist, if we're trying to move our organizations forward, this is something you can point to. Say, hey, best practice is to use Secure Boot on our VMs. Why next time we build a template, let's do this. And again, security is a process. You don't have to boil the ocean here. You don't have to stop everything you're doing and implement everything. do it opportunistically. Take a look at it. You probably meet a bunch of these already, bunch of these controls already. And if you don't, prioritize. What's easy to do? Maybe you're building new templates next month for a project or for a new build of Windows Server 2019 or a new Linux release, whatever. Incorporate these ideas then, and do so in that's the way to do it. And then you can check those boxes as well. But there's also some stuff about disabling app info. App info is super powerful. It lets you get information from a VM about what's installed on it, what's running on it. The downside is that it's super powerful, and that if somebody gains access to your vSphere now, they can query your VMs for information. If you're using it for a monitoring tool, vRealize Operations Manager uses it, things like that. I would leave it. If you're gaining value from it, I would leave it. But if you're not, shut it off, that sort of thing. Preventing recustomization. Turns out you can, when you deploy a VM, you know that you can customize it. You can run scripts and things. Well, what if the script did something malicious? What if I took an ADDC and recustomized it, cloned it and recustomized it to give me access, give a malicious vSphere admin access, And so that's what I'm thinking of. A little bit of isolation, a little bit of hardening between the systems is a good thing. Speaking of isolation, let's get back to the stream of things here. Number 4 is isolation. And when we're thinking about ransomware is the boogeyman of 2020. I mean, there's certain viruses that are also the boogeyman of 2020, but the ransomware is really taking off and something to be concerned with. And so building isolation, building separation between the different systems that we use and between the dependencies that we have, and questioning, why are we using the appropriate network controls, VLANs, firewalls, backdoors? Do we have any hosts that are sitting on 2 networks that are bridging a management network with another network? Such that an attacker could bypass a firewall and get in. One thing that sticks out in my mind, and I'm sorry, Dell EMC folks, I'm going to throw you under the bus here a little bit, but I bet HPE has got the same thing, and Lenovo, all that stuff. I'm just more of a Dell fan, and I've been using iDRACs for a long time, and iDRACs have the ability to present a management interface, a virtual management interface, to the to the operating system installed on the host. And so that iDRAC, all of a sudden you get a management interface into the iDRAC. Well, what is that? Well, it's a backdoor is what it is. Do you really want it? Does it gain you value? These are all decisions for you. I can't tell you what to do about it. I can't tell you that you should shut it off. If you're using it, maybe not. But, maybe there's a different way to secure it. I've got all my iDRAC set up on a separate hardware management network that I can access, and then I can control access to that specifically. So if other systems, monitoring systems, I query the hardware state directly there too, and then I don't have to install extra software on ESXi either. And it just makes a little less friction, makes life a little easier. And I'm a big fan of good fences make good neighbors, and that's what this is. Authentication sources. How do people get into vCenter Server? There's a lot of people that are using Active Directory, and they use AD. They use an AD group, vSphere admins, ESXi admins, whatever, to control access to their environment. And that's great, except if Active Directory has got a problem, like that zero logon one that's been floating around here, that's a big problem. The fact that somebody can get domain admin with just an AD account. They get an attacker who's sitting in your network. The ransomware is persistent. Ransomware is patient. These folks inventory your systems, and then they wait. And then when there's a 0 day, they can go back, and then they can attack. And so they promote themselves to domain admin. They add themselves to the vSphere admins group in AD, and now they can just log into your infrastructure. Well, that sucks, honestly. And so, think about that. The fix for that is you can still use AD accounts, but why don't you use an SSO group instead? and in vSphere, use the SSO administrators group and just put people in there, their Active Directory domain accounts. That way, it still might not help if you've got if you get an attacker with domain admin privileges, but at least they have to go try to figure out who the right login is, and maybe they'll trip a sensor, maybe they'll alert somebody in the process. And that's really what you want. You want to buy some time, you want to make them do a little bit of extra work so you've got a chance of actually seeing them. Backup systems are the same way. Thinking about ransomware, is it smart to have your backup systems attached to your AD? Is it smart to have should there be better air gaps? A lot of backup systems now have all completely online disk-based backups and things like that. Is that a good idea? Do you really want that? Should you have an air gap copy? The old idea that a sysadmin would take stuff home with them. That's probably not a good idea either, but the encrypting a drive or encrypting a set of tapes or something like that and taking it to a bank vault, safety deposit box, that sort of thing. Having the offline thing, having some separation between your authentication systems, having your backup systems be a bit isolated. Yes, it's a little bit of work to manage accounts there, but you gain protections, and you add a fence that somebody has to climb over in order to get to that stuff. And then just in general, loose coupling. I really like this. I've followed this sort of the idea of loose coupling for a long time. I got it from this book. It's a software development book, Code Complete, Steve McConnell. And page 80 is the best page in the whole book. It's page 80 and 81, actually. 80 desirable characteristics of a design. We can really learn a lot from this book and from this page. Minimal complexity, solid. Ease of maintenance, who doesn't want ease of maintenance? But loose coupling means designing so that you hold connections among different parts of a program to a minimum. Don't tie things together that don't need to be tied together, because it's friction as far as, doing upgrades and updates and patching. Now you have to, if you've got plugins to vCenter Server, to the vSphere client, now you have to check the compatibility of that. You've got anything you add to a system, you have to check the compatibility of it, and it just wears on your life. It just drags, and so if you can minimize that, you also minimize complexity, and that's a good thing too. So the best thing to patch is the thing that doesn't exist, right? It's kind of like the storage administrator's joke. The best type of I/O is the one you didn't have to do. Last, number 5, you knew it was coming. If I'm going to talk about something, I'm not going to harp on it, but updating and upgrading. And upgrading, I'll start with upgrading. Actually, why don't I start with, I'll just mention upgrading. Upgrading, if you're paying service and support on your vSphere licenses and you're not upgrading, you're not taking advantage of the features that are available to you. The upgrade process is a heck of a lot better than it was back in the 5 days. Basically 6.5 to 6.7 to 7, and now 7 update 1 is pretty slick. And I say that both wearing my customer hat from a couple of years ago, and as somebody who just did it in his own lab, and it's pretty smooth. And so I definitely encourage people to do it. Come up to 7. There's a lot of cool security features there. But as far as patching, the idea that we need to keep up to date, you cannot resolve vulnerabilities don't resolve themselves. The only way to remove a vulnerability from an environment is to patch it out of there. And so if you don't patch, it's still there. You can work around it, but a workaround is like a cast. I break my arm and I put a cast on it. And eventually that workaround, the cast protects it. And it's an imperfect analogy here because I'm healing on my own and a computer system doesn't do that. But we end up maintaining, like a cast, over time, the workarounds get smelly, they start to fall apart, and you end up spending more time working around the workaround or fixing the workarounds than you would have if you just patched the thing in the first place. And so, I'm a rip the Band-Aid off kind of guy, and much to my kids' dismay, but, rip it off, get the patching done. If you can't patch, honestly, if you can't patch during business hours, it's going to suck if you have a real failure. And, I've been telling people this, and this has been resonating really well with folks. And so I offer it to you as well. Use this as ammunition. to say, hey, we need to do better. We need to introduce some availability. We need to some redundancy to gain some availability. We need to think about N+1. Maybe your capacity in a vSphere cluster is such that you're invading your +5 or your +5. We all wish we had +5. Your +1, and so now you need to add stuff. But I'll leave it at that. I will also say that the specter of ransomware, like I was talking about, ransomware, these are patient humans. The initial infection might have been automated, but after that, it's a human being scanning your network, basically doing an excellent penetration test. And then they sit there. They find a way to establish persistence, and they sit there and they wait. And so if you don't patch regularly, if you don't patch in a timely fashion, these folks know that. And they love, attackers love change freezes, by the way. You know, you're not going to patch. And so keep an eye on it. Use your head. So let's recap. 5 steps. Take a measured approach. Use your head. Don't get crazy about stuff. Prioritize. Create an asset inventory. How do you know if you patched everything if you don't know what you have? And you might actually discover some things. Use Nmap. Nmap's a great tool. Scan a network. You're going to find things on there that you didn't know existed or you thought you got rid of. Tools. Speaking of tools like Nmap, tools like the Security Configuration Guide, those compliance kits that we talked about, those are really nice to get you started. Isolation, super crucial. Good fences make good neighbors. Think about what you're dependent on. Think about dependency loops while you're at it too. And then just stay updated and upgraded. And so, that's it. I've got 3 more weeks of this. This is my goal, to talk briefly about this. I'm a little over time, and I'm sorry about that. I see my former colleague Drew is commenting out here about my +5 remark. If people have any questions, let me know. The upcoming things, if you go to this URL, that's the schedule, and you can download ICS files to import them into your calendar so that you don't miss this stuff. But I really appreciate folks hanging around here, and like I said, this is my first time, so I think it's going pretty well. If you disagree, well, let me know. But any questions? I'll hang around for a couple of minutes here and see if people have any questions. Hearing none, I don't see any out there. If you've got any questions, hit me up on Twitter. I don't see anything on Twitter either. And but cool. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate your support. Thanks for being customers. If there's something I can do for you, if there's a security problem, if there's something that you would really like to see in the product. Actually, vSphere 7 Update 1 has got a new feature in the client. It's got a feedback mechanism right up at the top, the little smiley icon. And you can give us product feedback directly that goes right to product management. If there's something bugging you, use it, please. We can't read minds. We don't know what is making your life difficult, but we'd love to solve it for you. So, yeah. Thank you very much. Take care. Stay safe. And, have a good weekend. Thanks.